I've spoken before on this channel in regards to horror cinema fare. Actually, let's expand that before I move on, because we can actually combine thrillers in that as well. There's a consistency within both fields of cinema. There's been a dominance of trends that has taken place. And what I mean by that, I'm sure it's something you've observed, but I'll just issue a definition or loose definition for clarity's sake. You have a high-profile studio come along and say, we want to release a certain project with a certain focus, and all of these other smaller studios or independent filmmakers look at that movie, and maybe that's where the creative juices start rolling, or perhaps that's when those outlets look at their movies and say, well, let's at least maybe delay on the release date to better time it, in the window of that movie's coming out, so we can bankroll off the trend. And so it makes sense. I mean, again, you have smaller studios, they have less resources, free advertising dollars, search clicks based on that one project coming out that has much more recognition. I get it. It's understandable. I'm not saying that in any way to be critical of a smaller outlets. You work with what you have. But it's been a phenomenon that's taken place over the past couple of years. I'm sure most of us have noticed it by now, especially in the horror and thriller genre specifically. I mean, I'm sure you could think of some down below that you'd love to chime in on that I'm neglecting to mention, but just as a sample, clowns, zombies, nuns, dinosaurs, sharks. I mean, that one's been going for a while, even longer than I knew about it. Those are basically, again, you'll see a high-profile project release, and then all these other studios come along and say, we'll make fare that perhaps may be good, or maybe it's not, but we'll work with the trend, and you'll help manifest the trend and the phenomenon of what we've seen. Mothman appears to me to be at least a bit similar, although I would say less pronounced in its potency. I've not heard of this subject in focus before, even though it does have a history within cinema and the realistic world. As I understand, just on brief research, it's based on West Virginia based paranormal folklore. That's a bit interesting. I like to learn about different types of stories out there and different tales that people have. I mean, I've seen horror projects and thriller projects that have fit that bill and put, some sort of legend or tale, as prime focus. Let's say, for example, Antlers or Pet Cemetery, stuff like that with the Wendigo. I mean, both are kind of related in that. But the Mothman, as I understand, again, has that baseline. It's also appeared previously in perhaps higher profile work. The Mothman Prophecy, starring Richard Gere, that debuted in 2002. Just from a brief research standpoint on IMDb, I could see this already had a pretty exhaustive list of projects that have come out subsequently that focus on the Mothman legend, with the trademark red eyes. That's apparently, again, I guess a dominant trait that is stuck out with this particular tale. It sounds interesting to me. Again, I like legend-based, horror fare. And Mothman, this new movie, I mean, the posters, certainly got that more ominous edge to it. And it's going to be a pretty accessible release. In fact, I'm covering this shortly after it released by about a month. But like I say, it's pretty accessible. This is going to be debuting pretty soon, I believe, if it hasn't already, on the Indie Rights Movies for Free YouTube channel. They carry a lot of smaller film fare if you're not familiar with them. And that's how you'll be able to watch the movie. I might, watch it myself if I'm endeared enough by this, what we're going to take a look at today. But it's very much a first impression. I've got a couple trailers for it that we're going to get a good feel for the project. And perhaps see an emerging trend that maybe another major studio will come along and say, it's been a long time since that 22 movie, and you've got all these indie films being released or smaller pictures. Let's throw out something. Maybe there's already a trend in development, waiting to happen. I don't know. It seems to me that it's simmering. Anywho, if you need a general understanding of what this movie is going to be based on, this is basically the pitch according to IMDb. Amanda Mason and her boyfriend Tim set out to film a documentary on the case surrounding her missing brother Dakota. Through a series of interviews, they uncovered that Dakota was disturbed and troubled by an event months before his disappearance. After some time, Amanda is able to uncover a lost SD card and cell phone containing her brother's story and what ultimately happened to him. This puts her on course to meet the one thing her brother feared most, the burning red eyes of Mothman. So again, there's that dominant trait with the Mothman character, that being the red eyes. That would be kind of a cool visual. I can't wait to see how they materialize that. Again, understanding, of course, that this is a smaller movie, but sometimes smaller films, again, they can have a range in regard to their quality. You might have projects that appear, to really showcase that lower, range of material accessible to them, or perhaps you'll have projects that come along and really surprise you in how deceitful they can be, at least in painting themselves as more advantageous, higher profile work when they're really not. But, they endear you on that level. It sounds interesting. I'm wondering, because the synopsis mentions it, pretty frequently in here, or at least there's a couple mentions related to technology, and I wonder, based on the focus of this film being painted as a documentary in its realization, if this is going for like a found footage appeal, sort of like the Blair Witch Project, that I'd be, keen for. I like that type of horror fare. So let's see what this film has to offer from a range. Let's see if I'm right. I don't know. Again, this is very much the first impression. I'm just going on a synopsis here and the background understanding I've taken to better get in tune of where this movie is driving. I've got a range of trailers here to work up to get a good impression for this movie and to give you one as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start at the beginning, basically with the teaser trailer, and we'll work from there. Without further ado, 3 trailers in total. So let's start again with the teaser trailer. Seems fitting. Here we go. Just 30 seconds. First impression. Okay, I like the sensual appeal of it. Like, it feels you, but you hear what you see. That works for me. The font choice is good. I don't think it's the same as what was depicted on the poster. I kind of like that drawn out feel. Almost like a wooded pattern. I mean, the poster even has that look to it. Like, you see, I don't know where these, where the Mothman creature's residing here, but at least the impression I have is it's based on a forest setting. Again, a lot of Blair Witch undertones, at least from what I'm sensing. Now, maybe the trailers, again, will deter from that as we go along, but it's a good first impression. Again, I think I like that font better. It's far more eerie. I mean, the poster one looks fine. I just think maybe it looks a bit traditional. It fits for horror fare, but by comparison to what I'm seeing here, I would go with option B. I think it looks really good. In fact, I would have stuck with that. Maybe they changed it. I don't know. Let's go ahead and see, though, maybe from future trailers. I mean, the red eyes were kind of cool. A bit Brightburn-y. A lot of undertones to, let's say, other horror-related projects, but, I'm enticed by it. I'm warmed up. That's still, again, early teaser. Here's a better perspective, I guess, of the original, or the actual film. Hang on. All right. I'm assuming a smaller distributor. I've never heard of them before. Or maybe they're, high profile. I just haven't come across their work yet. Okay, it's filmed like a found footage movie.
We encountered something tonight. Something weird. I felt like Dakota was talking.
It truly feels like the Blair Witch Project.
And my thoughts. It's crazy.
With a bit of an improved, resolution. That, of course, comes with technological updates.
No anymore.
It's been a long time since the first Blair Witch movie. I'm not speaking about any of the reboots. I'm speaking about the original picture. That's all I've seen of that genre, or that story. I still like the drawn-out font better. But they all serve their purpose. I like how the red eyes are sort of in a disembodied shape. Like, we don't get to see the Mothman figure, or the silhouette. Again, paints a more ominous picture of him, but, I'm enticed by it. Very much Blair Witch. From the staging that, like I said, the forest element seems to be quite critical. These scenes, at least in the early days, it feels like it's mapped, like getting into the Blair Witch story. It feels very similar. Maybe that's the idea, that this is sort of like, again, the filmmakers in this case were so inspired by that movie. And again, the Blair Witch is a very revered horror project. I quite liked it myself. It's a much more approachable, horror film. I've spoken before in this case of the horror genre. I'm much more a thriller guy. Horror films, I have a lot of considerations going in that I make, like, is it too gory or is it too supernatural? For me, those are things that I consider. Paranormal, I'm a bit looser on, which I think the subject of this film is more so going for with the Mothman tale. But I think generally, if you're looking to maybe enter the horror space with a project that's not too abrasive to your tastes, I think The Blair Witch is a good introduction. Excusing all the profanity, because there's a lot, like 130 F words in that movie, which is kind of unnecessary, but I get the point. But a good film overall, a real staple, again, very well-known horror project. It seems from what I'm seeing here, that was a direct influence. Now, that's 2 trailers. This, as I understand, is the more recent one. Hang on. But good so far.
I am Amanda Mason.
It looks like a very competent horror film. Like, I could see this from another studio, maybe like Blumhouse or somebody.
Born March of 1997. We were really close throughout our childhood. As we grew older, we grew apart. Something happened to him. Something he would never open up to me about. He disappeared May of 2000.
Is this like the SD card?
And that's why I'm making this documentary. To find out what happened.
And it's even like time corrected. It's got the old like VCR play button on it. That's great.
Investigators were unable.
Ages the work. It almost, well, it's cool to have a combined approach, actually.
What did he experience? I want to find the truth.
See, again, I love this drawn design. I would have stuck with that. Maybe that was just for the ad. I mean, I don't know. The way they flash that coming soon screen. I mean, it could just work that in for, you know, to be traditional. I hope it's what you actually see in the movie, because the way they write it in the synopsis, I have to wonder, when they mention specifically that the brother got all of his footage supposedly in the SD card, is the film going to transition out of that? So we're watching this found footage filmed documentary, but then we're watching a project within a project. That could be quite interesting. I think that idea would be great. And again, I love the fact that, at least from what I'm seeing here, if this is actually in the movie, I love that they have the old interface of what you would see on a VCR tape. Again, it ages the project quite well, especially when you have a project that, as we saw from the previous trailer, seems to be, let's say, a more updated Blair Witch in regards to technology and what the filmmakers have access to. I really like the creativity of this project. Again, perhaps it's from from lesser known studios, but it appears to be a competent movie. Like I said, you know, independent films in regards to how they are actualized can deceive you at the time of release. I feel that Mothman, I could see this again coming out from a studio, let's say, like Blumhouse, right? To me, it looks like a variation on the Blair Witch, that being a direct influence here. Like, obviously, the location of the forest, the way, even though you don't see the creature in the original movie, you do see him in later remakes. But the way that, in this case, you see the red eye, so it's a bit different on that level, but it's staged very much like the Blair Witch. I almost felt like, again, I was watching an updated version of that movie. Maybe it could come across as a ripoff, I don't know. But I do think there's a lot of traits, at least from what I can judge here and what I'm seeing that's available to me for these trailers. I'm seeing a film that actually looks quite good and might be, you know, a project that, again, it might be from a smaller studio, might have less resources at its disposal, but it deceives you in its presentation. It looks to me like this could come out from any other, you know, prestigious studio and be a competent movie. Much lower scale, like, obviously, anybody can tell that, but well done. And, you know, come to think of it, I mean, in regard to the horror and thriller feel, you know, many studios gravitate toward those genres because you don't have to make projects that require a lot of funds. You know, whereas maybe in other franchise movies or other types of projects, you got to churn out a whole lot of dough for those. But, you know, look at Blumhouse. How many horror films have they made at this point that you look at their, you know, budgets and they're incredibly minuscule, right? And the amount of return that they get is substantial, right? And by comparison, there's not a lot of loss to take in either if the project perhaps flounders a bit, because people gravitate toward watching horror fare, and these projects generally do pretty well financially speaking. It appears to me, again, like a competent, higher profile project deceitfully. But I appreciate that. Again, I think the quality is there in this project to really speak for its pull to make you want to watch it, which I feel the compulsion to. Again, like I said, accessible release. This is going to be debuting on the Indie Writes Movies for Free YouTube channel pretty soon, if it hasn't already, as I'm making this video. And I don't know if IMDb specifies any other. No, they don't currently. That might be the only place to watch it for now. I'll definitely take a look at it, and we'll see, you know, if this is a trend in the making. It's already, you know, there's been other films, again, like I said, that have focused on the Mothman story, so we'll see perhaps where this film stands out and if a trend is built up on it. I mean, never say never. That's what the horror genre is doing these days. What are your guys' thoughts with this project? Is it one that you find endearing, especially if you're like a horror and thriller fan? I mean, again, it feels very similar to the Blair Witch for me, and I quite like those aspects. We'll see how far it taps into, you know, using that as an influence or an homage, perhaps. But I really do like to showcase on this channel independent and smaller movies. You know, everybody likes big commercial fare, the more well-known established projects, but oftentimes what I found, not every project, but most of the ones that I've had the pleasure of seeing, I'll say it, you know, that way, most of the smaller films I've seen have really come out much stronger. And I like to give projects that perhaps are lesser recognized, especially in the realm of advertising, a showcase whenever possible. So a project like Mothman, at least on the what I can see, it's a project that appeals to me in many ways from my general film appreciation tastes. We'll see what I think, when I watch it. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are down below, but as far as what I can see right now, it looks good. I like found footage horror movies. It has, again, real Blair Witch vibe. We'll see how well it succeeds when it releases, but I'm definitely geared to at least check it out. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.